Good morning and welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're very excited today to have Jack Symington of LACI and Michael Kano of LA Metro with us today to talk about some zero-emission clean tech and some projects that they have going on. As with all HTA webinars, this is for educational purposes only. You cannot redistribute or repurpose the recording in any way. But if you ever need to reach HTA or any of our presenters, you can always reach out. We've all done all these Zooms and go to webinars and all that, so we already all, are pretty familiar, but you can ask a question at any time during the presentation. Go ahead and enter it into your chat bar. If you're just listening in via your cell phone, I'll be checking for questions via email, so go ahead and send me an email at eric@harbortrucker.com. We'll give people a minute or two to get here. Today's webinar, you're gonna be seeing a series of polling questions throughout the presentation. So when you see one pop up, we'll prompt you to let you know, hey, this is the question. Here are your choices. Go ahead and click, and when we'll share the results live. It looks like we got about half the people in, so we'll give them, maybe another 30 seconds before we get started. All right. All right. So, first off, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background of who we're talking to, give you a brief bio, and then we'll, ask them some questions on what they're currently working on. We'll open up for a roundtable discussion and then answer all the audience questions at the end. All right. So, one of our presenters, we had a little bit of technical difficulty. You might not be able to see him up there. Jack Symington. He is LACI's program manager for transportation, focusing on goods movement planning and projects. Previously, Jack worked for BYD, managing various CARB and CEC demonstration projects for on-road and off-road heavy-duty battery electric trucks. These projects entail coordinating with utilities across California on infrastructure installation, while also developing deployment strategies to fit fleets' unique needs. At LACI, Jack is looking forward to developing the next generation of pilot projects to bring heavy-duty trucking closer to a zero-emission future. And we also have Michael Kano. Michael Kano serves as the Deputy Executive Officer for Goods Movement Planning and State Policy and Programming for Los Angeles County Metro's Countywide Planning Department. In this capacity, he leads Metro's development of the Los Angeles County Goods Movement Strategic Plan, multimodal corridor planning, grant applications for state and freight-related programs, project development and multimodal integration, as well as local, state, federal policy analysis for all things goods movement related at Metro. Michael created and leads the Metro's countywide Clean Truck Initiative, which seeks to expedite the deployment of cleaner truck technology into Los Angeles County. And he also leads Metro's Freight Working Group, which brings together key stakeholders from state, local, and private entities directly involved with goods movement into Los Angeles County. He also leads the 710 Clean Truck Program and serves as Metro's representative for the California Freight Advisory Committee. So now that we got a little bit of background about you guys, I'm going to go ahead and invite you guys to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you got going on. So we'll start with Jack first. Let me throw up his presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Sorry for all on the line with the technical difficulties, but am I coming across well now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect, awesome. Well, thank you, Eric, and thanks to HTA for inviting LACI to speak with your members about heavy-duty electrification. It's certainly something that is consistently in the news and kind of top of mind, but there are, of course, some hurdles ahead to getting that done, as well as some opportunities that I wanted to go over with folks today. So next slide. To give you a little bit of background on who LACI is. LACI is a nonprofit, a business incubator with three main focuses. transportation, clean energy, and smart sustainable cities. Those are the pillars in which LACI operates. And there are three areas where we work on these technologies and projects. One is unlocking innovation through the startups that LACI has as parts of their cohorts. These are incubating companies, usually in the seed and kind of Series A realm. We also have enhancing community, which works on workforce development, diversity and inclusion. And then lastly, we have market transformation, which is kind of the vertical that I'm working in, where we work with partners to develop planning and projects for advancing the technology in those three areas, specifically transportation for myself. Next slide. So a big part of LACI's transportation efforts and market transformation is the Transportation Electrification Partnership, which has formed in the last few years, as an unprecedented partnership among the local and regional stakeholders. We have the Air Resources Board, the CEC, the county and city and utilities as some of our leading sponsors and partners, as well as OEMs, technology providers, EVSE providers, as well as some other local entities that support our efforts. We understand that transportation electrification is not necessarily something that can be done by any one entity, and it requires a coordinated effort. And so through the Transportation Electrification Partnership, we're able to put everyone's heads together to figure out how to solve some of the problems facing transportation electrification. There is focus in the light duty side as well as the heavy duty side, but certainly for our purposes today, we'll be talking about our efforts on the heavy duty side. Next slide, please. So our LACI's start analyzing the heavy duty trucking kind of dates back to the fall of 2018, when we submitted, we put out an RFI and received over 39 responses from people about the state of technology. There was a very kind of diverse group of respondents, charger OEMs, energy storage technology companies, truck OEMs. And the purpose of this was to get a sense of what the state of battery electric and zero emission trucking is. And what we got from a lot of OEMs is that over the next 3 to 4 years, there are a lot of Class 7 and Class 8 battery electric trucks planned by these OEMs. And there is really an eagerness on part of a lot of these OEMs to use pilot programs to build up the scale to get towards commercialization. Manufacturing the trucks is one thing, but there are certainly challenges to deployment that we hope to solve in pilots, and many of them focus around infrastructure. It can be costly, it can be potentially confusing. Earlier on, back in 2018, there were still many different plug kind of standards, and so making sure that the infrastructure you had was compatible with different OEM fleets was certainly an issue at the time, and workforce is part of it as well. The trucks are maintained somewhat differently than diesel counterparts. So that being said, there is wide interest in putting together projects that address some of these challenges and move us forward. Next slide.
Hi, Jack. It seems that the audience is getting a cutoff slide. Let me just fix that for them real quick.
Okay.
It looks like it might be still cut off, so I'm just gonna maximize. Try to do it this way.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, audience. Hopefully you guys are able to see it from here.
Yeah. And so, LACI's efforts, one of the big goals that came out of our transportation electrification partnership, one of our big projects, was this roadmap 2028. And it's all about what we're going to be doing to electrify transportation in LA region in the run up to the Olympic Games in 2028. And a lot of it is complementing the goals that have been set out by the ports and the state of California as far as zero-emission drayage trucks. The 2017 joint declaration by the mayors of Long Beach and the commissioners of the ports to get to 100% zero emissions by 2035 is a fantastic goal, but there needs to be some incremental goals along the way. And so one of those that LACI has set out is to be at 40% zero emission drayage by 2028. We think that if we can, as a region, get there, that will put us on track to get to 100% zero emission by 2035. However, as referenced earlier, there are still some hurdles to get there. And so when LACI is thinking of what type of pilot projects we want to put together and where we want the focus to be, we really want to focus on the lower I-710 corridor and the larger 710 corridor more broadly. But given the nature of battery electric trucks in the state of technology right now, certainly focusing on the near dock drayage would be a priority, not only to accommodate the state of technology, but also to really kind of lift the pollution burden on the communities in that area, in the Carson-Wilmington region. And so when looking at the different types of infrastructure that can be deployed, there are opportunities to station chargers at fleet depots where trucks are garaged overnight. There are opportunities at warehouses potentially for quick opportunity charges, and mobile charging as well. There is a lot of work being done as kind of range as a service, as an on-demand service that we're also interested in working with fleets to figure out how that can be done. And going back to the project in general, we want everyone to be involved in here. So we will be partnering with fleets and the utilities and the ports, as well as technology providers to solve some of the infrastructure challenges. There are a few solicitations that are coming up in the next few months, with a good amount of money available to put towards either infrastructure or vehicles, or occasionally both. But if we think we can get a solid project together, we will kind of send a strong signal to the market that electric drayage is not only possible, but something that fleets will want to shift to in the near term, as it will provide a lot of operational benefits. Next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of, again, looking at the different types of technologies and opportunities to station infrastructure. Certainly commingled charging is a priority to some extent. We want to be able to show that fleets of even 4 or 5 trucks, if they want 1 or 2 to be electric, but yet they don't have the facility to make that happen. How do we set up a situation where they can have access to a centrally located public charger? And when it comes to the technologies, we understand that every site is going to be a little bit different. And if you're able to charge overnight, it's going to require a different technology than if you have to charge in only an hour or 2. And at different sites, depending on where they're located around the grid, you might require some auxiliary solar panels or energy storage to provide the necessary power that will be used over the course of a day. And then lastly, load management technologies are going to be key to make sure that sites are under the demand charge limit and that no more energy is being pulled than is absolutely necessary to make sure that the truck is ready to go by the time the next shift starts.
Yeah. And so in that vein, the HTA thinks this is a great opportunity, and we need some data from our motor carrier members. We'd like to actually do one of our first polls here. We would like to know where primarily are your parking facilities. So the audience, you'll now see a poll put up. And then I messed it up. So, sorry guys, I launched it and then closed it. I'll rewrite it into the software, Jack. Why don't we go ahead and continue on with the presentation? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think having in mind the polling questions throughout, we can kind of collect all the answers at the end. It'll be still very informative. So we do kind of want to get your feedback as well. But to get to kind of the crux of the issue is that we really find that forming collective charging depots are an ideal way to address a lot of the challenges that come with electrical infrastructure. I know I've worked with some fleets that, they might have 20 to 25 trucks, but there is enough power at the site really to only install 2 or 3 chargers. And so the sites located around the harbor that require the massive upgrades, it's not scalable. You don't want to only have 2 or 3 of your trucks in a 20+ truck fleet be electric if you can have more. And so by having a collective charging depot, locating one optimally close to the grid can allow for fleets to expand their vehicles without having to invest heavily in infrastructure. That kind of ties into the next one, being that a per vehicle infrastructure costs can be expensive if you're trying to even bring in enough power to supply 5 more truck chargers at your site. But if you are able to put, let's say, 50 at one site, that installation per charger is going to be far less expensive than trying to install 5 chargers at 10 different sites. And so really kind of taking advantage of the economies of scale to installing chargers is going to be key to drive adoption. Additionally, working with utilities is not something that fleets are used to doing or really should be doing. Your business is to move freight and not to kind of manage power and stay on hold with utilities for a while. And so in a collective charging depot solution, you have a landlord and an operator for the site handling all of that kind of fuel management and coordination with the utilities. As far as standardization goes, I think there is a little bit of kind of coalescing around 1 or 2 standards in the market. There's not going to be that dizzying array of different plugs, but at a collective charging depot as well, there'd be the opportunity to have a couple different chargers, plugs, depending on what the different OEMs will require. And as for workforce, the kind of maintenance and service and repair, again, if a charger goes down at your facility, it's really kind of ruining a mission critical asset for the fleet. And it's something that, again, the fleet shouldn't have to deal with. And so if you have all of the chargers in one central location, they would be far more easy to service and to coordinate, and any maintenance on the trucks as well, if they are all going to be garaged in a similar area. And lastly, there is some adjustment to operations that are going to be required to accommodate for the charging of trucks. That being said, if you have an operational structure where there are gaps between shifts of even a few hours, and you have the ability to park the truck at a third-party yard, have a driver pop out, and then a couple hours later have another driver pop in, we think that that can fit with some of the operational models that we see in the drayage fleets. So we're excited about the opportunity. And next slide. Yeah, so currently what LACI is doing is enlisting a technical advisor to look at sites in and around kind of the near dock 710 area that could be a depot that could, with maybe some storage or solar, accommodate all charging for 25 or 50 or more trucks. And we are working with the technical advisor to identify these sites, understand what it's going to cost, and then we will be submitting for infrastructure funding in the next kind of month or month and a half. I have the kind of the Carl Moyer deadline up here as one example of vehicle funding that's available too. Some of the programs may not be able to fund vehicles and will only fund infrastructure. And I'm well aware of the increased costs of the battery electric trucks. And so if you are eligible for the Carl Moyer program, I highly recommend you look into that as a way to potentially mitigate some of the costs of the vehicle itself, and provide match for a larger project that comes with infrastructure. There will be further solicitations in August and September as well that we will also be looking to apply for. And over kind of those months as well, we'll be looking at what technologies we'll actually need, what load management systems, what energy storage systems we can put on the site. But what we really are kind of asking from the folks on this call right now is to answer some of the poll questions, understand if you have the ability to go electric with your duty cycles. And then if you have interest in joining the collective depot. We think that if we have enough trucks and enough interest, obviously the more we have, the less kind of per truck the cost is going to be. And so we are looking predominantly in the LA Long Beach area. I understand there might be some other folks from outside that in the webinar right now, but we're really hoping to connect with as many LA and Long Beach folks as possible to understand what the scale of this project we can put together. And so I hope to hear from folks who are interested after the webinar.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, we'll get into that. That common charging yard. That's an opportunity that HDA think is a really good idea. But first, let's hear from Michael. I'm going to throw up his presentation next, and we will get cracking. All right.
All right, Eric, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
All right, well, thank you very much, and I very much appreciate having this opportunity to be here and to be on a panel with Jack and the great work they're doing at LACI. And we do have a lot of different stakeholders we deal with, and one of the areas we've always been looking for more relationships with at Metro, for not just this clean truck discussion, but goods movement in general, is with the trucking community. And I do appreciate Weston and his team's participation. Weston's very vocal and helps us a lot in terms of thinking through a lot of issues and topics we're dealing with at Metro here. We'll start with the next slide. So we're developing a goods movement strategic plan, just the nuts and bolts of it. This is a LA County perspective. It looks out about 5 years and it's trying to identify some core principles on which we can develop different programs and ideas. The two of them that have risen to the top as part of our discussions with our stakeholders are the principles of equity and sustainability, and no doubt about that being a primary concern for many stakeholders in LA County. From those 4 core values, we've developed certain priorities in terms of improving the goods movement system in LA County. Looking at a strong labor force, I think one of the issues we have is that we know that there are jobs of tomorrow that are not that are coming online that we need to make sure that our workers here today are going to be able to transition into. We need a safe and efficient multimodal system so that as we're moving more goods by trucks and trains, they intersect and they work seamlessly with mobility, with commuters on our shared use highways and shared use railroad corridors. We need a culture of investment and innovation. I think this electric truck discussion is a major part of this culture, where we're going to have many jobs and many different companies dealing with electrification coming online. And if we can make LA County a hub where we're taking that next step in truck technology, hopefully we can capture those industries and those jobs here as we try to electrify or make zero emission the LA County goods movement system. And then finally, strong markets, reliable supply chains. This is something that we saw tested very much during this COVID-19 crisis. And I do want to extend on behalf of Metro our thanks to the trucking community for your resilience and for working and basically keeping our homes and our stores and our hospitals supplied and fed, and making sure that we kept afloat during the many weeks of this crisis that has dealt a blow to a lot of our economy and our families. So thank you for that. From there, we have 5 initiatives. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the key one is the 4th one down, the Countywide Clean Truck Initiative. We found that it was a high priority for everybody that we look at ways of accelerating the deployment of both near zero and zero emission technology. I think what Jack presented to you just now is a look ahead at the fact that, you know, zero emission is developing. It's nascent. It needs a lot of help. It's getting there. We all know that it's a little bit difficult to just go out and buy a zero emission truck today and drive it around and have it work seamlessly within your operations without any issues. We know that there's a lot of work to be done, and we're all working on that from different angles from the state on down. But in the meantime, we do know there's some near zero opportunities as well we'll talk about. But the goal is if we can get more diesel trucks off the road and replace them with cleaner truck technology, we can reduce air quality impacts, which disproportionately affect many of our disadvantaged communities along the 710 corridor, for example, that have suffered through this. And we know as we're going to move more goods and we're going to have more trucks on the road, which is a great thing for the economy, we need to make sure that we're also taking care of the environmental impacts as well so that we can grow in a sustainable and an environmentally conscious way. Next slide. So the Countywide Clean Truck Initiative, we put together a major roster of people with different stakeholders' interests, some of them aligned, some of them at odds. But that's okay, because it's going to take everyone coming together and trying to form a sense of what we can do together, a little bit of consensus to make sure that we can move forward and develop something countywide, focusing on the 710 first, which I'll get to in a little bit. As you can see here, the Harbor Trucking Association is one of our stakeholders. We also are looking at the OEMs, and the energy folks, and the California Trucking Association in general, and the entire industry. So we need more of your voices. We'll be asking for that in a little bit, but we are holding more and more conversations. This is very important for the 710 corridor, which we'll get to in the next slide. So we have a 710 Clean Truck Program. Now this is a programmatic element that is part of the 710 corridor EIR. You may or may not have heard of this project. It's basically been on the books for a long time. We have funding for it in the measures R and M, sales tax measures that were passed in 2008, 2016 respectively. And what this is looking to do is modernize the 710. We have ideas on how we can improve the interchanges where they were built many decades ago and need to be upgraded to allow for better truck movements. We know we have the potential for expanding the 710, although that's going to have to be studied a little bit further because of the community impacts associated with it. But as part of this, we know we have to implement a clean truck program through today to 2035. And the main goal of the program, which is relevant here, is that we do want to replace diesel trucks that are operating on the 710 corridor, whether all the time or partially, with cleaner truck technology, simply to reduce harmful tailpipe emissions associated with diesel truck drayage. Our scope is technology neutral. We're looking at near zero emission or zero emission trucks. We want to deploy about 4,000 if possible by 2035. And we also are looking at fueling and charging stations for these trucks. The fueling stations in this case are for future hydrogen fueling stations, not for CNG, which our board has asked that we not pursue. But that's going to be part of it, and that's why LACI is so important, the work they do, and Metro is a partner with LACI on the Transportation Electrification Partnership, which is looking at ways to introduce that kind of infrastructure, which is so important, supporting a future zero-emission drayage future. Our focus is going to be on Class 8 heavy-duty trucks that are frequent users of the corridor. The Metro Board policy we have is that we have a transition, a progressive transition on the 710 from near zero emission to zero emission. That's very pragmatic. It reflects the current condition and the assessment of the technology. We know that there's great potential and opportunity for zero emission technology, but we also know that there are some issues that are keeping it from being not just feasible to use, but also helpful to use in terms of making your operations go smoothly and making sure that you can make as many trips as you can. We don't want to have trucks that you need to charge for, half a day to be able to operate, because it means you're not able to put in the hours you need to do your work. So we know there are some issues to work through there. Our Metro Board has taken the first step for this program. They've allocated $50 million, and the goal is to leverage that $50 million to raise a total of $200 million overall, which hopefully will be a combination of state and federal grants and other funding opportunities to be able to put together this program. How we do it, this is something we're still gaining input on. We want something that works and helps you want to participate in this program. We know it's voluntary. There are no mandates here. There's no requirements that you have to do this. We know there are some state requirements coming down. We know that there's pressure to transition from diesel onwards. We also know there's a lot of time involved for that transition from diesel to zero emission. We know that near zero emission trucks, CNG trucks, are a great interim step, and they do a great job for the future, for the air quality of the region. But we're not quite sure how to structure this program, whether it should be a strict incentive program, whether it should be some kind of a leasing program, or other ideas. So we're looking for input from all of you on these questions to find out, what would it take to get you out of a diesel truck voluntarily and into a near zero emission truck in the very near future. Next slide. So as part of our plan, our strategic plan, which includes the 710 Clean Truck Program, we've been hosting a series of meetings. We're in public comment period now. Started on June 25th and will extend to August 23rd. And we're hopeful to come back to the board in the November-December timeframe with the final plan based on input we receive from a whole bunch of stakeholders, including you. So we do appreciate your help and your thoughts, because everything you provide to us here will help us make this plan stronger, as well as the 710 Clean Truck Program make it move forward. Next slide. So your voice is very important. It's a hard voice to get sometimes, because we know you're very busy and you're all over the place and you're working many long hours, and taking time to participate and get involved is not something that's very easy all the time. But we want to try to make it as easy as possible by joining this webinar. We also have a link here which is being highlighted. This link has everything we've been working on. It has our draft plan. It has the initial concepts for the 710 Clean Truck Program. It has other webinars we've done where we go through and explain and do Q&A on these various topics. If you want to learn anything at all about what we're doing at Metro, please click on that link. And this gets to the third bullet there. But we want your input on the plan, on the early action initiatives, particularly the Clean Truck Initiative. And there's a public comment form there you can click on and basically use that to send us comments. You can always contact me here through HTA and to send us comments, or if you want me to call you and have a conversation, I'd be very happy to do that, or even set up another webinar in the future with this membership if Weston would like me to. So there's other ways you can help. We need to understand who are the independent owner operators located in the Gateway Cities region that can be part of our discussion panels, so we can have more one-on-one conversations on what your challenges are, what your needs are, and how this deployment of clean truck technology, which for us is on a voluntary basis, can be achievable and not disrupt your operations and not cause you to bear the burden of great plans and ideas being put forth by the state and by the local entities. We want to make sure that we do something that works with you and helps you decide that this is something that's going to matter and that's going to make sense and it's going to be feasible for you, not just put you out of business because it's too expensive or just is not efficient enough to use. We're also looking specifically for a 710 Clean Truck program. People who operate a diesel truck today and that are thinking of replacing that truck in the next 3 years. And we want to talk to you. We want to learn about what it will take to help you decide that your next truck purchase will not be diesel, will be either near zero or zero emission truck. We know that there's a number of trucks that are about to transition out. They're going to be ruled, moved out by requirements and mandates. And we want to make sure that we don't lose the opportunity to see if we can get you into a cleaner truck as part of this program, whether through some kind of incentives or other policy issues, the decisions. We know there's a lot of hurdles there. We want to understand them. We want to bring them down, those barriers down, so that we can make this easier for you. We don't want the entire burden to be on the trucking industry. That would not be right, and that's not helpful for us to achieve our goal. So those are my main points here. I know we have a poll coming up, but I really appreciate being here and happy to answer your questions when we get to Q&A, and I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Michael. So, there's, I guess, some issue with a lot of people seeing the slides. I'll follow up with our presenters following the presentation and see if I can just distribute them out. And that might be there's some links in there that you'll be able to click. For our presenters, to get it starting, you guys covered kind of some of the efforts being done to get the necessary infrastructure in. But can you tell us a little bit more about some of the projects? HCA thinks that common charging yard is a real opportunity to kind of pool and share our resources to get a demo project in place. So if you guys want to speak a little bit more about that, and then I can, we'll start asking the audience some of the polling questions.
Yeah, sure. I can address that one. The idea for it really kind of came out of, as I mentioned, that RFI that we released in 2018, and some of our experiences working with fleets in particular about some of those challenges. It was easy to get to 2 or 3 trucks per fleet, but then really going past that, it's trickier. And so to get really the most bang for the buck as far as infrastructure goes, really centralizing it is going to be key to success. Certainly there are going to be some requirements for what that site and what that operation looks like for fleets to take advantage, right? I mean, we want there to be 24/7 access because the fleets are always moving around the port area. We understand that a reservation system of some sort would be in order as well. But looking at the area in the near dock 710, we not only have the ability to look at specific sites that will be very affordable to potentially upgrade, because even with 20 trucks or so, you're looking at a 3 or 4 or 5 megawatt facility, and so locating it by power lines that are accessible is going to be a priority. Taking advantage of the utilities infrastructure program is also going to be a priority. Both LADWP and Southern California Edison have committed a good amount of money to installing infrastructure for medium and heavy duty fleets. And so, looking at those programs, looking at the funding that's available now, we're very confident that we can get a depot together where all different HTA members, if you want 1 or 2 trucks, electric trucks, if 5 to 10, the site can accommodate it. And so I'm certainly excited to speak with any fleets that are interested. I'm well aware that every fleet has some different requirements, different nuances to the operation. And so over the coming month or so, getting a sense of what those different nuances are and how one depot can accommodate all of them, I think will be important.
I just want to add to that, we're very excited by this pilot. We've been a little part of it a little bit, and appreciate LACI inviting us in. We're not going to get from 0 to 100 all at once. We're going to need some smart infrastructure being put in place, some pilots, some key areas. We know there's going to be a need to invest not just in the public sector, but also the private sector as in a partnership, but in a strategic way that doesn't waste money and that thinks about the future. And we know that if we want to get to zero emission in the coming years, we have to do things like this now, because I know we've heard from our truck drivers that, there's a lot of concerns about the infrastructure when you're on the road, and how do you, maintain the ability to operate with charging stations and fast charging stations to be able to keep going. So I do appreciate what LACI's doing. We're very excited by it and looking forward to partnering with them on this.
Yeah. So with that, why don't we go into some of the polling on the parking operations, how people park. So here's the first one that I messed up. Sorry, guys, but it should now be launching. You should be able to see it, everyone. So, we want to know where the majority of your parking facilities in relation to the ports of LA Long Beach. Are you near dock, so within 10 miles? Are you within LA County, so up to about 50 miles from the port? Or are you out in the Inland Empire or further? And, I know we do have some people here that are not operating within the LA Long Beach area. So, if you're not, go ahead and let us know that as well. And, one of the good opportunities that we're seeing for this common charging yard is, a lot of our carriers, they don't own the land that they're operating on. So they might not really have the ability to just go ahead and put in a charging station. So that's one of the things that excites the HTA about the common charging yard. So I'll go ahead and close the poll now, and we can share the results.
Yeah, Eric, if I could kind of add one thing. I understand that there are some folks that aren't in the LA Long Beach region, but I think one of the big reasons why LACI wanted to partner with HTA on this is that HTA's presence across California or across the West Coast really provides the opportunity to replicate this project elsewhere, whether it's Oakland, whether it's Seattle. And so that's a very exciting kind of opportunity for not only LACI but for the state of California to understand how a collective charging depot can be implemented in any facility or any region.
Yeah, and we're happy to help get the common charging yards up in Oakland too. It looks like about 60% of the people on the call today are near dock, with 10 being further, but within LA, another 10% out in the Inland Empire, and we do have 20% that don't operate within the LA Long Beach ports. So we can definitely work with LACI and the state of California on common charging yards elsewhere. So during your presentation, Jack, you mentioned about being able to swap drivers. We do have a poll on that one as well. So I can throw up that poll if you want to get into provide a little bit more detail on it.
Yeah, sure. So given the costs of the assets, really, these trucks need to be a two-shift truck. And so that, really requires two drivers, and figuring out how to have, one driver pull in to the facility, maybe opportunity charge for an hour or so before the next driver hops in and goes on their shift is going to be kind of key to success. And if a fleet's operations can accommodate that, I think they'll be in a good position to take advantage of the opportunity. Certainly there are range concerns, and is an hour between shifts or 3 to 4 hours overnight enough time to get enough range into the truck to take advantage of it? That's certainly a question I would like to, a conversation rather, I'd like to have with the individual fleets. We are seeing a lot of OEMs talk about getting trucks in the 250-mile range over the next couple of years. And so for fleets that are really focused on near dock, that intra-shift charge might not even be necessary. And so looking at how to structure the operation around both a third-party lot and a two-shift operation is going to be key.
Great. And so, we did get about 60% or 67%, excuse me, saying that, they are not able to swap the drivers at a third-party yard, driving park, where the driver parks the truck and a new driver swaps in. So that might be another area to address as we explore further on the common charging yard, how that would work out for us. So it might be, just fast charging at the common charging yard instead of overnight. What are some of the avenues that the HTA can, help inform these public efforts? I know part of the process is these webinar meetings where we're polling the audience. If you guys want to elaborate further, and I'll start the polling on the usage. We can start with how many trips down the 710 you make in a month. So audience, go ahead and you'll see the poll launch up. And go ahead, Michael, if you would like to elaborate further.
Well, sure. I think this is very important for us to understand the trucking community and the usage on the 710. This is specifically related to the 710 Clean Truck Program. And really what it gets down to is we need to identify owners of trucks that operate on the 710 corridor to work with you to try to, provide subsidies and other kinds of means to help you transition from diesel voluntarily to a near zero emission truck, or to make your next purchase a near zero emission truck as part of our program. So, we do understand this. Obviously, some of you may travel a lot, some may not as much, but we need your help. It's difficult sometimes to get this kind of information, and it's really information that will be vital to our ability to identify actual drivers and support them in this decision.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and share that result right now. More than half of the motor carriers in the audience are making more than 500 trips a month down the 710. So, I think you're correct in identifying the 710 corridor as a great place to focus our efforts on. And I could share with you guys later the, more information on that if you'd like.
Yeah, I would appreciate if the truck drivers and the owners feel comfortable, if we could take a conversation offline by email, perhaps, in terms of just understanding who's making those trips and how we can send information and materials and have a conversation.
Yeah, and if anybody in the audience needs help getting a hold of these guys, I'll share in my follow-up email their email addresses and contact links. Jack, you had a question about distance for your duty cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and put that poll up, and we can start the audience polling on that one, asking about what percentage of your fleet drives 200 miles or more per day. And
yeah.
Jack,
Thanks for putting that up. We understand that there are specific duty cycles where electric will work. One kind of nuance is when you're in side streets or stop and start traffic on the lower 710, you're getting a lot of regenerative braking going, and so you're actually collecting a lot of energy back into the truck when you're running that type of duty cycle. Going to the port and then 10 miles away, doing that 20-mile round trip 6 times, let's say, for 120 miles, you're actually going to be using less electricity than going 60 miles out to the Inland Empire and back once. And so if you have an operation that's primarily structured around going to the Inland Empire from the ports, it may be more difficult to convert more of your fleet to zero emission in the near term. But if you have an operation that's really focused on near dock, where you have trucks that are going less than 200 miles per day, you'll really be able to take advantage of the electric powertrain there and see an operating and fuel cost substantially lower than that of diesel or near zero.
All right, thank you. You know, we're getting a lot of questions coming in, so I will, you know, speed up the, because we only have 10 minutes left, I'll speed up some of the polling. Sorry, audience. You know, here's the results for your duty cycles. You know, it seems like almost a three-way split. You know, in terms of, you know, let's go on to the next question. So in terms of how we can get a hold of these trucks, you know, there's a lot of grant programs available. How can can you describe a little bit some of the programs available and how our HTA members can help develop some of the parameters for these new grant programs where we can put some input that really works for our industry?
Jack, did you want to take that on the Carl Moyer and the?
Oh, yeah,
HV?
sure. I'll speak a little bit about the Carl Moyer. I mean, that's a kind of a near-term opportunity. It does require scrapping, which I understand, you know, not all fleets might be able to take advantage of. You know, HVIP as a program is has been kind of spotty at times too, and so you've spoken with a lot of fleets who have, you know, occasionally been frustrated by that. But I think one also kind of near-term opportunity, in addition to Carl Moyer, is the Volkswagen mitigation funding, and a large or a very beneficial aspect to that program could be a three-way swap where, you know, if you're a fleet that has, you know, predominantly newer trucks, you can't take advantage of a program that requires scrapping an old truck. But if you can transfer, you know, a 2014 truck to a fleet that then scraps a 2008 truck in order to get your zero-emission truck, that would be huge for expanding access to this program and really getting the dirtier trucks off the road as well. And so we'd certainly be interested to speak with HTA members about whether or not that's something they would endorse.
So should we ask them if they're familiar with the Carl Moyer, or you want to ask them about the age of the truck?
Well, we can kind of pass over those. I mean, I'd be happy to have a conversation with any of these fleets about the details of some of those programs one-on-one, because every fleet's going to be a little bit different.
And I would add to that there's MSRC, the Mobile Source Resource Committee, I think it is, out of AQMD, has some funding as well. And I think the thing we're trying to do with our program as we're creating it is to tailor it more towards these trucks and these communities. So it'll probably take some of the best aspects of various programs, but we have a chance to mold it. And I think, you know, if there are frustrations or issues or barriers associated with the other programs for people who are interested but find those programs aren't a good fit because of the requirements, let us know that as well. We want to understand what it is potentially that is keeping people from participating in these programs, besides just a lack of funding available, the amount of incentive funding available, etc. So you have a chance to help mold our program, which hopefully will be around for years.
Yeah, and we're getting comments coming in that saying, hey, you know, we're not familiar with all the resources available, and they're looking, you know, what about converting your newer fleet? So I think there is a real appetite for more information. Why don't we go ahead and ask the audience real quick about some of the barriers they're facing to adopt? You know, so what do you see as the most important issue that keeps you from purchasing near zero emission or zero emission trucks? Is it the total cost of ownership, supporting infrastructure, technology readiness, or, you know, is it lack of incentive funding?
Right, and on that fourth one there, I think it got cut off a bit. The incentive funding available is not enough. That's one of the other options there too for the fourth bullet.
Oh, I see what you're saying, Michael. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You know, why don't we go ahead and close this poll? Looks like we got a good chunk, and I'll share the results. It looks like, you know, half the respondents are saying it's readiness of the technology. So that's what's preventing them from going forward with it. And then I could follow up with the people that responded to other. I'll go ahead and follow up with you following the presentation to get your specific input, and I'll forward it on to our panelists.
And that would be interesting to see on the state of readiness if that's applying more to the zero emission technology versus the near zero, which is CNG, which is available commercially today.
Gotcha. All right, so I'll follow up with our participants that way. You know, we have 5 minutes left. You know, I don't want to keep you guys too much over, so why don't I go ahead and go into some of the audience questions? You know, one of the audience wants to know, if I'm not mistaken, CNG will not be included in the LA Metro's clean truck plan. If so, is there a specific reason for this?
CNG trucks are going to be part of our plan. In fact, if anything, we're going to rely, I think, a little bit heavily on CNG trucks in the first years of this program because of that issue of commercial availability, costs, etc. We want to get diesel trucks off the road ASAP, and it's most likely going to mean more CNG trucks. There may be some confusion because our board took an action not to support CNG fueling stations with the funding from the program, feeling that there were other, not just community concerns which had been raised, but also there's enough avenues to be fueled for CNG that already existed or that would be put in by the private sector. So that might be where the confusion is coming in. But in terms of the truck fleets, we are going to be looking at replacing diesel with CNG for the upcoming years.
Thank you. There was also a question that came in, well, I guess a suggestion for some information that you may want to know is how many trips are made from an intermodal yard over to the port in between those areas. So maybe from the UP or BNSF straight over to the port. Is there, another question is there a one-stop location for a list of all the funding available for new trucks? Is there a single place that our members can go to kind of compare different options for them?
You know, I can somewhat address that. I think that's in large part something that the LACI and TEP wants to address, is because there are a lot of disparate funding sources, whether it's CARB, whether it's AQMD, whether it's Metro. I know the ports are even launching their own kind of clean truck program with container fees in the next 6 to 8 months. And so, you know, I'm not aware of a one-stop shop, but the individual Air Resources Board, AQMD, and ports do all have their own information. Michael, you may know a little better than I.
Yeah, no, I know that is one of the issues, I think, as part of our countywide clean truck initiative, which is looking at the entire region, inclusive of the 710. I think that's going to be one of our deliverables we want to create with our partners like AQMD and the ports, et cetera, who are on that committee. This needs to be as easy as possible. If we really are interested in getting truck drivers into newer trucks, cleaner trucks, then we need to take down these bureaucracies and barriers and different things that get in the way of getting the information, getting access to the funding, and getting trucks on the road. So that is one of the areas we have heard that we need to fix, and we'll be working on that.
Great, thank you. And that, some of the comments rolling in are a very positive response to that. Making it easier for our motor carriers to find the information and get the funding is, furthers the goal of moving to cleaner trucks. Another comment that came in was there's a unique situation that a lot 80 to 85% of the trucks going through the port are from owner operators, are owned by owner operators and not necessarily owned by the carriers. So while the carrier may be able to go through the funding and get the application done, it's the owner operators that actually own these trucks. So getting them to maybe scrap their truck for a new clean truck is not really feasible for them.
Yeah, I like to comment on that, and Jack, I don't want to cut you off on that, but I think that's one of our concerns at Metro. We know that in addition to being truck drivers, that the independent owner operators are also small businessmen and women, that in LA County especially, and we know that there's a lot of just equity, small business considerations that we need to be thinking about. So, I think that's one of the questions I had asked in my presentation. was, if you are an independent owner operator, a small operator in this LA County area, especially in the Gateway Cities area, get in touch with me. We would like to talk to you about what your challenges are, especially because they may be very different than a larger fleet that can amortize or find other funding mechanisms or just have more flexibility in handling this versus, just one truck or two trucks you may have that you need to change, and all of a sudden we're putting burdens on you as opposed to helping you out. So we understand that we may need to tailor the program differently for smaller owners versus larger fleet operators. So we want to get into that, and I'm sure Weston will help me out with that too.
Yeah, and the HTA will do what we can to assist.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to add, certainly,
go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Part of a project, we have a collective depot. We don't want to exclude the owner operators. We understand that there might be a paperwork burden, and so I think any critical aspect of that project would be developing a mechanism to take that burden off of the owner operator and handle the application and paperwork collectively in a pooled sense. To join the project.
Awesome. And HTA is definitely able and willing to, get a working group together for owner operators to help, get more information on this to you guys and kind of find a solution that works for them too. We did hit the 11 o'clock mark, so I'm sorry for keeping you guys a little bit over. It seems like, this is an ongoing conversation that a lot of people want to participate in. So if it's okay with you guys, in my follow-up email to our attendees, I'll include your contact information and copies of your slides. And I really want to thank you guys for taking the time today to come speak to us. A lot of our audience is pretty energized about transitioning to cleaner trucks, and it's what we need. Some people are saying right now, I want to be involved in that working group for owner operators. So, HTA will definitely start pursuing it, guys. With that, thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us. I'll share your contact info with all our members to kind of help get the ball rolling. And if you ever need anything from us to facilitate another conversation like this, another working group, HTA is always happy to help. And with that, thank you guys for joining us today.
Well, thank you, and we'll take you up on that offer, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you have any further questions, I'll forward them on to our presenters. Just shoot me an email, eric@harbortrucker.com, and expect a follow-up email from me shortly after this call. All right. Thank you, everyone.